This is crazy. You're staring at a map of Europe, finger hovering over a sea full of islands and a mainland shaped like a warrior's shield. And you're thinking, what happens if someone invades Greece? The short answer is, don't. The long answer, put on your helmet, grab a strong coffee, and keep your hands inside the hoplite at all times. Because this is going to be a ride through geography that breaks armies, a military that punches way above its weight, and alliances that turn a local brawl into an international "are you sure about that?" moment. Start with the stage. Greece is a fortress disguised as a holiday brochure. The mainland rises fast from the sea into mountains that once stalled empires. Valleys pinch into choke points, roads ambush themselves around hairpins, and passes are named because somebody, somewhere, tried to take one and didn't come back. The Pindus runs like a spine down the west. The Rhodope and the ranges in Thrace guard the northeast. And in between, river lines and ridge lines force any attacker to choose: crawl slowly and bleed, or move fast and risk being cut off by defenders who already know every goat path and wind channel. Then there's the Aegean, hundreds of islands, each a potential picket, ambush, or unsinkable missile barge. If land invasions are about steel and fuel, Greek defense is about angles and time.
To understand the modern geopolitics of Greece, you have to take a look at the history and topography of the country. The rugged terrain provides Greece with a real advantage in terms of defensive war, and this was the military strategy of the ancient Greeks.
History weighs in with a smirk. Invaders have landed here before. Persians crossing at dawn, Ottomans in Patience, Axis forces with panzers and planes, and still, the legend you remember is of small forces on bad terrain ruining excellent plans. The Metexus line, blasted in World War II, didn't break easily. The mountain war in Epirus froze offensives on slopes that ate tanks and drank oil. The partisans that followed made occupation feel like a never-ending uphill sprint. Greece's brand isn't undefended border. It's we were doing heroic resistance before it was a hashtag. So imagine someone tries anyway. Pick your direction. Overland, there are exactly 4 neighbors across mountains and rivers, and one land frontier that matters most to planners: Thrace, the northeastern shoulder where the Epirus River meets marsh, reed, and floodplain. A mechanized force trying to punch through at speed will discover that flat is a very optimistic word when the ground changes personality every kilometer and every bridge is a trap. In dry months, dust gives you away. In wet months, mud handcuffs your logistics. And while you're filing forward, the defenders are already on the flanks with artillery triangulated on roads they can draw from memory. You want a joke? Greek gunners have probably named the grid squares after their favorite tavernas. Accuracy improves when you're hungry. Try the west through Epirus and you're threading needles in the Pindus, where a handful of companies and a bit of rockfall can freeze a brigade like a deer in headlights. Swing through the north and you meet ranges and river lines that turn columns into accordion files. Every axis is narrow, and narrow axes love defenders. Amphibious, welcome to the Aegean, a labyrinth built by a cartographer who really wanted to meet Zeus. On a map it looks like an open sea. In reality, it's a chain of kill boxes. The islands don't just sit there looking pretty. They're garrisoned, wired for surveillance, and positioned so that any ship or landing craft moving between them pops in and out of coverage like a whack-a-mole that the mole never wins. The defenders get to disperse, conceal, and choose angles. The attackers have to concentrate, commit, and pray the weather is in a good mood. The Aegean has a sense of humor. It changes wind and wave direction mid-sentence. And the Greek Navy, it lives here. Frigates, fast attack missile boats, corvettes, patrol craft, and, most importantly, submarines. Aegean is shallow and fractured by ridges and troughs that swallow sound. Air-independent propulsion subs sink into that noise like ghosts and wait. If an invading flotilla tries to thread a strait, it's doing so under periscope eyes and between littoral radar fences, coastal missile batteries, and ships that have practiced the dance 1,000 times. There's a reason sea denial is not just a doctrinal bullet point here, but a cultural instinct. You bring a fleet, Greece turns the sea into a minefield of physics and patience. And if you think your big deck amphib with helicopters will just park offshore and shuttle in waves of marines, beware the very modern math of anti-ship missiles launched from places you didn't see and aircraft you can't outrun. Air power decides tempo. The Hellenic Air Force built its identity around quick reaction alerts, intercepts over the islands, and precision strikes in a battle space where minutes matter. Multi-role fighters scramble from hardened shelters on bases that look like the landscape swallowed them whole. Rafales and upgraded F-16s can sprint, shoot, and vanish under cover of mountains that cannibalize radar returns. Mirage veterans still prowl with the kind of long-memory pilot culture that makes you feel like you've walked into a chess game on move 27. Greece didn't invest in air just to look good at parades.
Now, air forces from 14 countries are participating in the multinational live fly exercise in Oceos 2025. The prestigious exercise is being hosted by Greece's Hellenic Air Force.
Great opportunity for us to work in some high-density areas with a lot of nations participating.
This year's drill includes air forces from France, Italy, the United States, and Qatar, among others.
It invested to own the first 20 minutes of any fight, and to make the next 20 hours miserable for anyone who thought they'd get comfortable. The air defenses make every altitude unhappy. High and fast, long-range systems put a ceiling on hubris. Medium and sneaky, mobile batteries shuffle like street magicians, popping up to swat, then melting away. Low and slow, manpads dot the likely approaches with a veto pen. You can jam, you can spoof, you can decoy. Some of it will work, some of it won't. But you cannot make the map flatter or the islands farther apart. Let's talk people, because steel without will is just expensive decor. Greece runs on conscription and reserves. That means there's a standing force sized for peacetime and a much larger shadow that fills in behind it when the phone rings. Raider brigades, paratroopers, mountain troops who think altitude is a personality test, and naval commandos who can appear on a beach you thought was a secret. All of them drill for scenarios the rest of Europe uses as cautionary tales. Every island garrison knows exactly how long it takes to go from call received to ambush set. Every coastal sector has a playbook for first wave, second wave, deception wave. And the local National Guard units, citizen soldiers tied to the places they defend, convert street grids and cliff paths into tactical diagrams. You know how every Greek village has at least one person who can fix everything with a piece of wire? Now imagine that personality in uniform, with radios, mortars, and a commander who grew up there too. Logistics wins wars, and the attackers' logistics here are cursed poetry. You need fuel. The defenders have rehearsed hitting bridges, culverts, and choke points that make fuel trucks line up like a parade you didn't want to host. You need pace. The roads are narrow, twisting, vulnerable to landslides, and crossed by viaducts that fit missiles like a glove fits a hand. You need to move at night. The mountains eat moonlight and give thermals to the side that chooses the ridgelines. You need resupply to islands. The defenders choose which straits are open for business today and which are closed for maintenance. Your fancy precision-guided inventory goes down not from a grand, decisive strike, but from 1,000 small interdictions that force you onto Plan C before you've even briefed Plan B. The strategic backdrop is even worse for an invader. Greece is not an isolated target. It's a node in an alliance web. Fire a shot across a recognized border or sink a ship flying a certain flag, and you risk turning a local fight into a capital-letter Article 5 conversation. Add in bilateral defense relationships, countries that actually show up when the phone rings, and suddenly the invader's scenario planner has to assign air defense belts and strike ranges not just to one country's assets, but to everyone's. Aircraft from elsewhere don't need to be stationed in Greece to matter. Runways and tankers lengthen reach, and intelligence flows where treaties say it should. There's also a large, strategically located NATO facility in Crete that has been the Eastern Mediterranean's Swiss Army knife for decades. It doesn't sleep. And then there's the maritime chess beyond the islands. Sea lanes, choke points, and energy plots that feed Europe's grid. The attacker's calculus has to factor in shipping insurance going vertical, pipelines under surveillance, and a coalition incentive to keep arteries open. It's not just about, can I land here? It's, Can I afford for global commerce to hate me by Tuesday? Back on the ground, the first week of a hypothetical invasion would be a masterclass in momentum theft. Day 1, an attacker declares objectives and launches probes. Day 2, they realize the probes look like they're wearing bright neon jackets labeled "Hit Me." Day 3, airbases they thought were located here are actually located somewhere nearby, but we won't be sharing coordinates today, thanks to dispersal and decoy tactics honed in a crowded sky. Day 4, a fast attack craft that popped out from behind an island persuades an expensive ship to reconsider its life choices. Day 5, a mechanized column learns that drones plus artillery plus cliff-lined roads equals "we're walking now." Day 6, a submarine you can't find rearranges your replenishment plan with a single torpedo. Day 7, your staff wakes up to discover that the defenders have turned what you thought was your operational maneuver space into a collection of problem sets that all require different answers at once. A smart invader might decide to bypass the hard stuff and try to split attention with hybrid tactics: cyber, sabotage, disinformation. Greece treats that as weather, unpleasant but accounted for. Grid hardening, backup generation, manual overrides, and a population intimately familiar with rumor, counter-rumor, and the cousin of a cousin who knows the truth because he used to date the mayor's niece. Try to sow panic in a country where grandmothers have survived dictatorships, devaluations, and an earthquake before lunch, and watch the panic curve flatten into sarcasm. This is a society that runs on phone trees and stubbornness. As for sabotage, you can break something once. Fixing it faster than you can break it twice is a national hobby. What about overwhelming air and naval superiority from a much larger power? Size helps until terrain and time cut it down. The Aegean is not blue desert, labyrinth where sensor fusion, coastal batteries, and short-legged sorties can make long-legged platforms feel short. A carrier group is a fearsome thing on the open ocean, within a narrow sea full of islands bristling with radar, missiles, and aircraft launched from strips you couldn't see on satellite because they're invisible until they're not. It becomes something that must be very, very careful. Modern anti-ship missiles don't care about your feelings. They care about angles, seekers, and whether a shoreline protrudes just enough to hide a launch until it's too late. Attrition favors the defender with friends. Ammunition stocks run down for both sides, but one of them can phone a friend. Spare parts arrive, training pipelines surge, intelligence becomes a torrent. The attacker, meanwhile, discovers that sanctions bite, shipping lanes narrow, and every daily resupply is a headline. Your budget bleeds while your opponent's resilience thickens. A quick word on humor, because even in war planning, a little reality check helps. Yes, the stereotype is goat paths and mountain villages. No, you cannot underestimate a country that invented the phalanx, and then, centuries later, named a modern automatic gun phalanx, and welded it to ships that live in the very waters that birthed the original concept. That's what we call consistency. Also, if you do manage to set foot in a village square, you will be offered coffee. It will be strong. It will come with questions you cannot answer. And if you lie, the local yeah will know. Do not try to out-intelligence a woman who has negotiated family politics across 3 time zones and 5 generations. That's a 5D chess game you are not ready to play. The modernization angle matters. A lot of the hardware you'll face isn't hand-me-down museum stock. Fighters have new sensors and missiles. Ships carry modern air defenses and precision strike. Submarines are the quiet kind that make sonar operators doubt their marriage. Coastal defense integrates drones, radars, and missiles into a web that communicates horizontally, not just vertically. The army's backbone is lighter, faster, and better at night than the cliches assume. Interoperability with allies means that your adversary's national inventory is actually the front edge of a much larger arsenal that plugs in seamlessly. Even the training simulations run with partners who bring their own bad habits, so you can practice beating them. Let's test the craziest scenario: a lightning strike. Hit hard, seize a piece of territory, an island, a border town, and present a fait accompli. The theory is you change facts on the ground faster than the defender can react, then dare the world to push you back. In Greece, that timeline is shallow. Islands have garrisons, and nearby islands have more. Helicopters lift, fast craft sprint, jets arrive, and by the time your flag is up, The hill it's on is a circle of artillery solution tables. On land, a seized village becomes a cauldron once mountain troops close the roads you didn't know were roads. Reinforcement for the attacker requires sea or air corridors the defender can range. Reinforcement for the defender requires a phone call to units already measured in minutes rather than hours. By the time the spiderweb of alliances fully lights up, the local web has already tightened. Morale is a force multiplier here. The national memory is a highlight reel of no said at great cost, and with better lines than most politicians can write. The society is noisy, argumentative, and impossibly proud. In peacetime, that looks like chaos. In crisis, it looks like cohesion. Fishermen tow target buoys into place. Farmers lend tractors to build berms. University kids who spent last week debating philosophy turn up as volunteers handling comms and logistics. The diaspora floods phones with money, parts, and expertise. You cannot measure this with a spreadsheet, but you feel it in the way units hold a line an hour longer than the manual says they should. Even if you're a cynic and reduce it all to numbers and nodes, the math is ugly for an invader. Every route in is a funnel. Every funnel can be closed. Every closure buys time for forces that are already forward, already trained, already living in the terrain they will fight for. Air denial is layered. Sea denial is layered. The command structure has practiced the exact crisis you're imagining for more years than your think tank has budget. And the second-order effects, markets, alliances, rival opportunists smelling blood, are not your friend. So what actually happens if someone invades Greece? First, rapid detection. Second, rapid friction. Third, rapid coalition alarm. Fourth, a slow realization by the attacker that they have bought a problem with no cheap exit. Their planners will stare at the map and wonder why it suddenly looks so small, and then glance outside and notice the mountains look very big. Their navy will find that each new strait is a test, not a shortcut. Their air force will discover that, paradoxically, the shortest flights can be the most dangerous. Their ground forces will learn the difference between distance and time. And their political leadership will understand the exquisite pain of opening a box you cannot close without help from the very countries now lining up to tell you no. Could an attacker win a battle? Of course. Physics doesn't play favorites, and luck has a sense of timing. But wars aren't bar fights. They're long competitions of endurance, adaptation, and narrative. And in that competition, Greece fights at home, among mountains and islands that bend toward defense, with allies who see the stakes as larger than a border dispute, and with a public that is inconveniently brave. The invader fights away, through bottlenecks the mapmaker designed on purpose, under a spotlight they can't turn off, and against the one thing that always ruins good plans, a country that refuses to cooperate with its own conquest. The punchline you were looking for is the one you already knew. Invading Greece is crazy, not because the country is invincible, but because everything about it, terrain, training, timing, and ties, conspires to make victory cost more than any sane strategist would pay. If you want beaches, bring sunscreen and a towel. If you want a war, bring a calculator and a willingness to explain to history why you ignored 3,000 years of warnings.